You're listening to a VBMA podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of our VBMA podcast. And today I'm so excited to host Stith Keiser here, the CEO of Blue Heron Consulting.
Thank you, Jasmine. Great to be here.
Awesome. Yes, it was quite a fun introduction that we got at CSU, as well as being at our national meeting this past year. And I'm so excited to be talking about networking with you. It's something that we do a lot at the VBMA. It's a part of a lot of our events, and especially national meeting. And so I really wanted to get a ground level for those who may not even know what the word networking is, what it means, and have some sort of guidelines into how do we do this going forward, and how do we present our most genuine and authentic selves.
Sure. No, that's great, Jasmine. And you're right. It's something that we talk about in this profession a lot. And I think everybody, well, not everybody, but most people feel like it's valuable to open doors that may not be opened otherwise. But it is, at least for me, it's intimidating. I think I'm actually an introvert at heart. And so I have to force myself to be an extrovert. And I know a lot of our professions that way. So yeah, it's kind of this big, scary topic, but there really is a lot of value behind it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know us at the VBMA, especially at the national level, we tend to be a little bit more the extroverted side.
Yes, ma'am.
We love talking to a bunch of different people, but that's not everybody. And like you said, our profession is largely introverted. We tend to like animals more than we like people.
Right.
That's why we're here. But it's very important to understand, like, even as a veterinary student, that there's always a person attached at the end of that leash or lead rope, whatever kind of animal it is. And we have to not only navigate conversations with them, but then we do a lot in this communication piece as far as how do we talk to clients and how do we navigate inter-team related, but how do we talk to people who maybe we're not so comfortable with and that we just want to get to know, in the profession.
Yes. Yeah. I think, and you've heard me say this at CSU, Jasmine, but I realize that different veterinary schools have different nuances as they prepare their students. And I do recognize there's some differences in the curriculum, but at the end of the day, I think from an employer's perspective, we assume that from a technical component, most graduates from most veterinary schools are going to come out pretty similar. And you hit the nail on the head. I think what a lot of us, not everyone, I'm sure, but a lot of us as employers are looking for is people that are strong in what you just mentioned. Just the communication skills, which obviously is a huge part of networking. So I love that you and the VBMA are focusing on that because I think that's really going to help differentiate our VBMA members above a student who's going to have comparable technical skills, but maybe not the same interpersonal skills.
For sure. And CSU is an expert in that.
Yes,
we can listen to several other podcasts on that. And it's starting to grow and expand in different ways. So I guess just to focus more on that networking piece and what it means, what would you define networking as?
To me, networking is all about making genuine connections. And that's probably the most simplistic way I can break it down. And I think networking can take on the form of kind of intentional, formal mentors. I've been fortunate to have some great mentors in my life in this profession. And I've had a few, I guess, desperate vet students ask me to be their mentor. And so I think it can be kind of formal like that, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, to your point earlier, one of the things I love about the National VBMA meeting is it's a great opportunity to network with other students as well as, industry professionals from all walks of life, clinical practice, outside of clinical practice. So I think networking can be that formal thing. But it can also just be a random conversation that's sparked at a conference and that relationship built into something and it continues past them.
Absolutely. And I know for me, because I only started this journey, as a first year veterinary student, I didn't know what I was doing. The VBMA just had an open officer position and they were like, hey, you want to go to Florida? And I was like, heck yeah, I want to go to Florida. Who doesn't want to go to Florida?
Especially if you're in Colorado in January. Florida sounds really nice.
Colorado in January. I love the state, but the sun sets at 4 p.m. It doesn't get up till 10 a.m. and it gets pretty dreary.
Yes,
cold.
ma'am.
And so I didn't know what to expect of it. And then I had so many great conversations conversations with so many different people and getting to know how different vet schools operated, it really opened my eyes to the world and the world of veterinary medicine in a way, to really appreciate, what I have here at CSU and the so many opportunities there are within the profession. I know we talk a lot about when you get down in the dumps and you think that there's nothing else other than to be a clinician, you're wrong. But how do you know you're wrong until you see the other side of it? You see the industry side of it, and not even just industry, but the different roles that different DVMs have taken. There's so many to list. I know a number of them have been on our podcast. And so I think, for me, why I would say networking is important to get to the point. I'm very long-winded.
You're good. It's your podcast. Take your time.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right? Just listen to me talk. For me, I think it was important to, again, get exposure to the different areas within the profession, to make lifelong friends and different connections. I definitely would not be a national officer if it wasn't for the opportunities and conversations that I had at our national meeting and big events like AVMA. I know we have another fun networking event with AVMA at AVMA this year. It's going to be a social hour with even our alumni. So connecting with the VBMA alumni has been instrumental in changing, honestly, my thought process and career path and different just opportunities out there. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. And it's so how do I convey into words how much that this one skill has changed my life,
Yes. Like you said, it opens so many doors. And I think one of the other kind of cool things is right before this call I was on, so in addition to Blue Heron, I'm also a private practice owner for just a couple of hospitals, a couple of mixed animal practices. And I was on a call with that leadership team. And we were talking about one of our doctors who had been struggling just kind of psychologically with some mental stuff. And she was kind of thinking about, do I make a transition from clinical practice, which I think can be great for certain people. But in addition to opening, your eyes and paths outside of kind of traditional practice, she was able to find some mentors through networking that really kind of coached her through this phase of life that she's going through as an associate. And it's been so cool in the last several months to watch her kind of do a 180. And so her networking and her mentors, at this point, she ended up not choosing to get out of clinical practice, but instead through talking to mentors, through utilizing her network, she was able to kind of get some help and some guidance on how to deal with those things. And I've just seen, a complete turnaround in her attitude or personality, or her attitude or happiness. That, of course, translates to how she communicates with clients. It translates to her ability to be a producer. But it's just, it's so cool to have a network, because whether you're considering a career change or within our profession, or just a bit of a rut with where you are, a network can kind of help pull you out of those things.
Yeah. And I guess to go and touch again on that friendship piece, there are so many people that I've met over time, and I've watched them go throughout their vet school journey, and just being able to chat with them, just to discuss, hey, fourth year kind of sucks in some ways. It's a lot of long hours. There's a lot of really great things to it. There's a lot of great learning opportunities and getting to actually be on the clinic floor, but just making those lifelong friendships within the profession, I think has been huge.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the event at AVMA with the alumni. Some of my closest friends are guys and girls that I met through National DVMA, in some cases almost a decade ago. And that's why I haven't stayed in touch with everybody, but I've got a handful of, I consider really close friends that we met through the national meeting and networking. You find something you've got in common, even outside of the profession, all of a sudden you hit it off, and those people can be a sounding board and be devil's advocate as you're kind of struggling with different things in your career or navigating different career opportunities. So you're right. It's not just the professional benefits of networking, of which there are many. Certainly, there's also just the friendships you build.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to mention another one is actually a lot of marketing stuff that I've learned as the marketing director. So for those of you who don't know, when you apply to be on the national board, you apply to be on the national board. You don't get to choose what role that you actually get to serve the next year. It's up to the previous board to see different qualities and attributes in you to say, oh my gosh, she would make a phenomenal marketing director. Let's put her in that role. Even though I had zero marketing director experience whatsoever, it was a big learning curve. And I got to connect with Dr. Ryan Gibson, who's actually faculty at Auburn. He's a neurologist, but he is the alumni portion of our marketing team. And he served as an absolute fantastic mentor and friend in this role. And there are others too that I've been able to, like you said, soundboard off of to get different ideas. Even students, just different ideas of like, hey, how would you like this information? And it's a simple question such as that to really serve my position better and grow in those skill sets. So it's been super cool.
No problem.
And so I guess to kind of move forward in the conversation too about networking is kind of like, where do we even start? So I know for me and my personal experience, I went to national meeting as a first year veterinary student, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I tend to be a bit more extroverted and I tend to just go say hi to everybody. And so that's what I did. I was just, bouncing from table to table in speed networking, or bouncing around in the, oh my gosh, I should know this. What do we call it? I think we just called it roundtables.
Oh, the roundtables, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the roundtable sessions. And, just saying, hi, my name is Jasmine. I go to CSU. What's your name? And I found that to be really daunting, but kind of fun once you got into the flow of it. And then it got pretty tiring towards the end of it. I know it's very long sessions that we have.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. No, it can be exhausting because it's almost a bit of an adrenaline rush. I feel like you're kind of on this adrenaline high, especially if you're outside your comfort zone doing networking, and by the end of those events, you're just exhausted. I remember that feeling.
So yeah, I take breaks. I guess that's one big tip and trick for me, and we'll get into more about like tips and tricks on how to network. But being, maybe even a little bit more introverted, what would you say is the best way to start, or where to even begin when you're thinking about going to one of these events?
Sure, that's a great question. I've got a couple of thoughts, some of which I just have personally worked for me. Again, I'm not naturally an extrovert, so kudos to you. I'm jealous and envious of folks that this comes naturally to. So a couple recommendations I would make. One, there's now it's old podcast, or not podcast, but a TED Talk by Simon Sinek called "Start with Why." If our members haven't seen that, I'd recommend checking that out. And the reason I recommend checking it out is because it focuses on how so many people and businesses as well kind of lead off with what they do and what they're interested in. And I notice a lot of people, when they're newer in their networking journey, they tend to focus on the what. So they may, ask somebody, what do you do? Which is not a bad question at all, but then it kind of ends. Or let's say, Jasmine, you and I meet and you ask me kind of, tell me about yourself is like a very common question. Right? Tell me about yourself, or what do you do? And people would respond with, well, I'm a fourth year vet student at CSU, which again, not a bad answer. But the start with why is all about, you can still answer the what, but be able to incorporate kind of why you are what you are. And so I recommend that video because I think it opens the conversation up more to kind of probing and open-ended questions, which can then just carry the conversation further. So that's a great video. And I also think it helps. It's individually, so many of us may not have really thought about why we chose veterinary medicine and why we've chosen the career path that we're thinking about in veterinary medicine. And that Start with Why video, I think it's great for kind of introspective of being able to think about, okay, why this specific career path for me, which again, just makes it much easier to carry a conversation around it. So that'd be one quick tip. And then a second tip, and I'll take a pause here. If our members haven't read or listened to How to Win Friends and Influence People, that was probably one of the most instrumental books for me when it comes to networking, because it's all about how to establish those genuine connections through open-ended questions. The exact same stuff you learn in veterinary school about connecting with clients, but it kind of takes it to another level. And if you think about people that you've probably kind of have resonated with you, it's probably not the people that do what I'm doing right now, which is just talking. It's probably people that ask you a lot of questions. And that How to Win Friends and Influence People talks all about how to do that in a genuine way, going so far as like, hey, here's some great open-ended questions you can ask. And I think when I see those bonds take off through networking, we all want to feel like, we matter and that someone kind of cares about, who we are, what we're interested in. And that book, again, for me was a great kind of icebreaker to help me get better at trying to establish those genuine connections. Those are the kind of two top things off the top of my head, I guess.
Absolutely. And it makes sense too, like to be able to, maybe I don't start with, hey, I'm Jasmine, I'm a fourth year student at CSU, but hey, I'm Jasmine, I love cows.
Yes.
and
that's so different,
I'm a fourth year
right?
student.
That's so different.
Yeah. And it definitely it just helps to build that gap. And it's like, okay, maybe they like cows. Maybe they don't like cows, but that's fine. Now we can talk about cows going forward.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think people love people that are passionate about other things. So even if, and again, I come from a mixed background as well, so I do happen to like cows, but even if I didn't, I think people are inspired by talking to people that are passionate about it. So even if the cow thing wasn't necessarily the hook for everybody, it's hard for that enthusiasm and passion not to be contagious, which again is going to lead to more conversation.
Now I just want to talk about cows all day.
Let's do it.
Yeah, they're a lot easier to talk to than people.
That is true. They still talk back.
So I guess if I had to go into like tips and tricks for networking, the things that I've picked up, and I'm not an expert in any sort of way, and we're all learning and growing. But I've done a few events, so the things that I've picked up as far as tips and tricks is one, take breaks. Like, know when you're getting tired and know when it's time to just like, okay, I'm going to run to the bathroom, I'm going to grab a glass of water, going to head outside for a second just to, reset myself and build that, I want to say social bar back up a little bit. My second one would be to like look for those connections and to not be afraid to just say what you really mean, like don't go around being rude.
Yeah,
I think we all, there's a standard,
really good advice.
But why be afraid to talk about what you're passionate about,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I think the break thing is a great point because everybody has a different tolerance level. That sounds horrible, a tolerance level for networking. And I've always found that one of the things that has been most awkward for me is when you're in that, networking kind of event and the conversations come to a natural end. Everybody always seems so hesitant to break it off because you stare at each other awkwardly for a second because you're both ready to kind of move on. Great conversation. And I really like what you said about it's okay to say, hey, I need to hit the restroom, or I'm going to go grab a drink, or just being able to end it with, hey, really nice to meet you. I'd love to follow up with you if that's the case, and then move on. I think that can be one of the toughest things is not even just starting the conversation, but ending the conversation, being able to go and continue to kind of work through and make some of those other connections.
Absolutely. And I guess a question for you would be, from a student side of things, I'm sitting here awkwardly. I don't know how to necessarily end it. Maybe I don't have to go to the bathroom and we're just staring at each other at this point.
Yes.
What would you say is a really good phrase that, is professional and, I guess you to give one of like, I'd love to connect with you further, but how do we even get to that point? Like, how would you end it?
Great question. Some of it's going to depend on probably that individual connection and that conversation. So I'm going to give you more of a broad answer, realizing there could be more of a customized answer. But typically, if I feel like the conversations come to a natural conclusion, I always, start with some expression of gratitude. Again, a genuine expression of gratitude. So it's great to meet you. I really enjoyed hearing about your story, or really appreciate you sharing your background in whatever piece of veterinary medicine. So it's kind of just showing that genuine interest again. So it's a thank you. And then again, if you want to make a connection, because not everybody is someone you're going to want to follow up with, and that's okay too. You don't have to go. Always tell students in class, it's not about how many business cards can I collect and feel like I got to talk to every person again. So if there's an interest in following up, then after the thank you, I would ask somebody, hey, would you be willing to talk with me more about whether it's something they said or something you're interested in, and kind of try to get that consent for further conversations. And then at that point, you don't even usually have to you don't have to use it. I need to run to the bathroom or grab a drink. Usually at that point, it's just a thank you again. And then, you kind of wander off and go start the next one.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I've done a couple of these. I'm not an expert either, but I've failed enough and had enough of the awkward conversations that I'm trying to minimize those. So I got a few tips and tricks along the way.
That's awesome. And I guess to talk about like business cards too, because you had mentioned those. One of the best gifts I have ever gotten in my entire life is a LINQ virtual business card. And so it has a little chip in it, and I can tap it to literally anybody's phone, and they can get my contact information or see my it's link, but LINQ page right away.
That's cool.
So that way I don't have to have any printed business cards. I'm not spending money on that, and it's environmentally friendly. In Colorado, we love to recycle.
So you get some points for that one, right?
So we get some extra points in the bag. What would you say, like in regards to business cards?
I am a fan of having some sort of business card. I love what you just mentioned, that it's just you carry one around, you're good to go. I do think it's worth having. I've seen a couple of students over the years, and I actually stole this idea from a student where they had a business card and they did hand them out. So they had multiple business cards, but I see a lot of business cards that are too busy, right? They're trying to get their name and email and phone number and school and what year they are and a LinkedIn profile and so on and so forth. So I've seen some really cool ones that, we'll still have their name and maybe what school they're from. And then one of the neat ones I saw this year, VMA, actually, was it kind of had their core values and around the edges of the business card. And that was kind of neat. And then on the back of the business card was a QR code. So not exactly what you have, but similar in that it was a very clean professional business card. And then on the back of it, QR code, which I think took to their LinkedIn profile. So it was kind of a neat way to be able to share contact information that wasn't quite so cumbersome. But yeah, I am a fan of having business cards. I'll be the first to admit sometimes I forget to bring them or don't bring as many as I should, but I do think it's helpful. I've also found from doing networking events, especially earlier in my career, where you still end up with, some X number of business cards at the end of the night. And I have a hard time remembering some of the conversation. So my easy little tip to cheat is after a conversation, when natural, I'll have carry a pen with me as well and jot down a thing or two on the business card. I mean, it's not hard to do, but it just helps me if I do want to follow up with people and I'm, doing emails at night at the hotel when I get back, I can pull up my business cards and have a note or two just for myself to jot my memory about what we talked about and why I wanted to follow up with them.
Absolutely. I actually didn't realize I did that too at the last national meeting because you get so many business cards. Right. So it was like, I don't even know how to keep track of everybody. And just to make those little points helped immensely later. It was like, okay, now I can remember this conversation.
Yes.
This is what we talked about. And I love the idea of putting core values along the edges of the business card. It really puts that personal touch on it to be like, Jasmine, compassionate, eager, honest, things like that, you share. If you're networking to look for a potential employer, then, they could look at that and be like, hey, these match our core values within our practice from there.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I haven't seen very many of these. So this is not something everybody was already doing, I don't think. But in addition to the core values, I've also seen interests. Either someone will sort of for your direct animal medicine. So there's multiple flavors with that general concept in mind that people can kind of take and tailor to what they're trying to convey.
Now I have to go make new ones.
Sorry. Please don't have to make one new one, it sounds like.
And so how would you recommend carrying all of these things? Because I know, like, when I was going around doing these things, I would carry just the whole stack, like, in my pocket or in a purse or something. But I found it to be quite cumbersome at times. And is there, like, an easy way to carry around business cards that you found? Or is it just one of those
question.
Evils in life?
And I feel like, depending on who you are and what accessories you may or may not carry, some people may have an advantage more than others. I have found that even at nationals this year, I took my a leather bound small briefcase that had my laptop in there in case I wanted to show any numbers because I was talking about ownership stuff, and I just stuck a bunch of them in my little briefcase. But I've done the same thing. I've stuck them in shirt pockets in the front, stuck them in the back pocket, in front of my wallet or behind my wallet. So no, I don't have any really novel or unique way to carry them in mass. In worst case scenario, if when I've run out in the past, I just ask, hey, do you want to swap a cell phone number, and you just do the whole text each other real quick so you can capture the information that way. So maybe not as ideal as a business card, but worst case scenario, you run out. There's still other ways to trade information.
Yeah, I guess that is one of the benefits of living in the 21st century is everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a notes app.
Exactly. Yes, exactly right.
I did watch an Impractical Jokers episode last night. Are you familiar with the show?
I am, yes ma'am. I did not watch it last night, so I probably haven't seen this one, but yeah, I'm familiar with it.
I think it was an older episode because it was, just recorded on Hulu. But the punishment was for Sal to hand out his business card, but he was only given one. And he had to take it back from people until he gave it to the correct person. If, you're looking for cringy awkwardness and what not to do, definitely go watch that episode.
Yes. Yeah, that would be awkward for sure. Yeah, I think I know I shared this at CSU, Jasmine, so some people may have heard it, but my first networking event I was ever at, and I share it with students, is like, it can't get worse than this kind of scenario. So if you can make it through that, you're good. But I remember I was at a networking event, and it was somebody that, was pretty, well thought of in the industry, and I was trying to make a good impression. And I went to hand him my business card, and he just looked at it and walked away. I was like, oh, that's so painful. So anyway, you can bounce back from those things. That's like, I've only had that happen one time, but yeah, that's probably worst case scenario.
Yeah. Fortunately, I've been blessed to not have any scenario like that.
Hopefully it stays like that.
And so my next biggest tips and trick, or tip would be to always limit yourself. I've found that a lot of these networking events do provide alcohol. People tend to be most social when they do have a little bit of alcohol in their system, but I have seen a number of events where either I guess I just say participants in general go a little too hard.
Right.
And so I would always recommend, like, yes, there's free alcohol, but maybe keep it to one drink if you need it. Better yet, don't. If you don't, just because it gives you the opportunity to really have more genuine conversations. I feel, in my opinion, but that's, I understand not everybody's.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Any of us have been at conferences have all seen the CEOs of big companies make asses out of themselves at the bar. So you're right. It can happen. And I've also seen students that probably were overserved, as I guess the term is now. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm somebody that I love a good beer, but I may carry one beer around, for the majority of the evening. So I think to your point, you got to know yourself. I mean, some people can have 2 or 3 beers and be just fine. Some people can have one beer and not be just fine. And I think what I always try to remember is, because I do enjoy a beer, this is an interview, right? Especially at a conference like this, whether you know it's an interview or not, everybody you meet with, especially how small this profession is, whether you ever apply for a job or are interested in a job with someone you're talking to, they know people. And just like you and I are talking about, without using names, people that we've seen probably embarrass themselves, like those stories get out. So you're right. If you're someone that enjoys the drink and it doesn't impact your ability to communicate, by all means, have a drink. And if you're someone that, if you have one drink, you're going to have 10 drinks, probably better off not to have that one drink in the middle of networking.
Absolutely. And like you said, I think it is 1 degree of separation in our profession. So everybody right. knows everybody.
Right.
And so that leads into my next tip as well, to just always remain professional and polite. Because you never know who they're going to know.
Yep. Yeah. And I think in addition to that, there's also, I've met people at either varying stages of my career or their career where at the surface and at that time, we met and had a good conversation, and I didn't see a reason to connect, right? I didn't see a way for me to maybe help them or for them to help me. And then a few years later, I'm in a new position or they're in a new position, and I'm like, oh, I remember meeting this, so-and-so. And now all of a sudden, one of the two of us in a position where we really could help each other. So one of the things I always try to remind myself of is, networking is not just about getting things. I think some people think that networking is about, how can I meet people to get things from people, jobs or opportunities? And while that can be a natural kind of positive consequence of networking, what I've found is that because we all evolve, both as individuals as well as throughout our career, people you meet, even the day you meet them, there may not be a natural, connection or a natural way to serve one another, but it doesn't mean that down the road it won't, which really just underscores the point you just made, Jasmine, about no matter who you meet, you never know who they know, and B, you never know that down the road they may be in a position to really help you out, or vice versa, which goes back to, it's the golden rule, I guess, basically, but just always good to remember.
Yeah. And I can't wait for those moments, to be honest with you. Like, it's so cool to think that I might meet somebody today that I'll get to talk to 20 years from now, and right. how we'll be in different positions. And,
yes,
I think that was actually one of the, not the first thing, but one of the near first things that I said to you was like, how can the VBMA help you? And that's,
which is amazing.
Yeah. Part of my role, as the marketing director, is definitely to help build and bridge those connections with different people across the industry. But even as a student, it was super helpful for me to ask those questions to other students.
Right.
As a student, how can I help you? Do you need somebody to study physiology with you? Because it's the same no matter where you are, the physiology doesn't change.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's rare. I mean, I remember that email because I don't see that from a lot of people, not even just students, like people in general. I think, some are just looking out for how can you help them, and some are not looking that way. They just don't think to ask that question. That's something that definitely jumped out, Jasmine, in that email. And I think I replied with, I have no idea, but I'd love to help you if I can. It caught me off guard. But what a unique way to start a conversation. I think especially, speaking to students, a lot of the people that they're going to be interacting with are people that they're going to be thinking, okay, how can I help the VBMA, or how can I help this student? And they're not going to be used to a student saying, hey, how can I help you? And so whether or not there's actually a way to help or not, and this is an awesome opportunity. So this is incredibly helpful, and it's just fun too. But just even asking that question, I think really kind of flips the coin in a positive way. Again, kudos to you for doing that. I think that's great advice for our members.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of scary in the moment, but I've learned that students do hold a lot of power, and they do hold
absolutely.
a lot of different backgrounds, so they can help in any sort of way. Like, yeah, I had no marketing experience whatsoever stepping into this role, but there are so many other students out there that maybe they were a marketing director in their previous job before vet school. I have two people in my class. One was a neurosurgeon and the other was a human, surgeon. And,
wow.
Yes, there's veterinary students, no doubt about that, but they have lived lives and have so many skills and experiences that they could help somebody in some other way. And who knows what that might be.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And not only is it the second career people you're talking about, but we've all got life stories. So even if you're more the traditional, go climb through the academic ladder and hit vet school, it doesn't mean you still don't have some amazing life experiences that you encounter, just through the traditional kind of academic climb. So couldn't agree more.
What else? What else have we not hit?
What about, we've talked about how doing all the things we just mentioned can lead to potentially long-standing relationships. What tips do you have for the follow-up? Because I know I've been in spots where I met somebody that I want to connect with, right? We hit it off, really looked up to him, but I was, in a point in my career, I'm like, this is some important person for whatever reason, and I'm nervous to reach out. And I've had students say the same thing, not about me, but just saying, hey, I don't know what to do. Like, how do I actually take the next step in that networking relationship beyond that event? What have you found works well there?
As far as reaching out, honestly, I always just send an email. I assume that nobody knows who I am. I assume that even though I've talked to them, they've probably talked to a million different people, and they probably have no clue who I am. And so I always just reintroduce myself. I would be like, hey, I'm Jasmine. I met you at such and such event. We talked about X, Y, and Z.
I like that.
What are your thoughts, going forward? Or is this something that you want to pursue? I actually think I did that with you. In an email.
You did, yes,
I think I was like, hey, Stith. Hey, I saw each other in person at CSU. Again, apologies, I didn't get to meet you at national meetings because I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But we talked about doing a podcast, and is that something you're still interested in?
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I really like what you said about citing something from the conversation, because you're right, all of us, we're at an event like that, we are meeting a lot of different people, and just because we may not remember somebody doesn't mean that we didn't like the person or didn't feel a connection. It's just there's a bunch of people in a very small amount of time. And I think what you just said, again, I found that to work really well too, of being able to cite something specific that you talked about, and then in a lot of cases that will trigger that individual's memory, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I got you now. So
yeah, absolutely. And I wish I got more emails like that so I could be in that other position. I'm sure I will one day. So I think being on the receiving end, should I get an email like that, I would just be ecstatic that they reached out again, to be honest with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Even if they didn't 100% get the conversation right. Maybe they were talking to somebody else. I'd be like, cool, wasn't me, but that's fine.
Right.
Let's go get you somebody else.
Yes.
I love talking to people. So that's me.
Yeah. Well, like you said, even if you quote the wrong thing, I think it's flattering to have somebody reach out to you, because it means that obviously you stood out enough for whatever reason, that person's mind, they wanted to reach back out. So you're right. Even if you botched the email a little bit, who cares? You still made the effort to reach out. And that's what's going to, I think for most people, that's what's going to mean the most to the receiver, is that you took the time to reach out.
Absolutely. And I think that's important to also mention that the part of that nervousness is that there can be a power dynamic there. Like as a student walking up to the CEO of some company, you're like, oh my God, what could I possibly bring to the table? And then we talked about like what inherent value you have, but having that buddy can help at least make you perceive or allow the perception that there's not such a big power gap there. And that we're all just people just chatting, just having a good time.
And no matter who you talk to, they've all been in similar shoes, maybe not the exact same shoes, but no one gets to be CEO of something or practice owner of something or, lead whatever of something without starting, further down the quote unquote ladder. And that's something I get really intimidated as well, talking to, the executives sometimes. I have to remind myself, like, they got started somewhere, just like I'm getting started somewhere. And that sometimes helps a little bit.
It's true. I always forget that fact that every great veterinarian was a baby vet and was a student at some point. Maybe they're just as nervous as you, to be honest with you. You ever find, like, and this might be really weird, I'm sorry, as if it's really off the cuff, but do you ever find it's, like, helpful to imagine somebody, like, being nervous? Like, even if they're not nervous, but, like, imagine that they're nervous about standing in front of you. Does that ever help you in conversations?
That's a great thought. Can't say I have done that, but I like the idea. And if I'm feeling nervous, which I usually am, being able to assume that the other person may be just as nervous as I am would probably make me feel less like the oddball in that conversation. So I like the concept.
Yeah, it's really weird. I'm sorry.
No, it's a fair question.
I guess that stems from, we were talking about like how to deal with angry clients, and it's like, come up with 5 reasons why they're angry today. Mm-hmm. And one of those reasons can be they had diarrhea. Like, you don't know why they're angry. You're going to find out eventually. But if you can come up with 5 reasons as to why they might be angry, whatever they come up with probably won't be as bad.
It humanizes them. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yep. Humanizing people in front of you. They're not just whatever their title is. They're a human with a life story behind that. And I think that connects back to that the whole why and the whole knowing your value and being able to communicate your life story and your just who you are. Mm-hmm. Just who you are, simply put.
Yeah, no, agree. And I also think there are just some jerks out there. And I say that because there may be a networking where you do everything that we're talking about and you do everything perfect. And some people are just jerks, and that's okay too. It doesn't mean you failed at networking or that you shouldn't be doing it. Just like same thing with clients, right? You're gonna do every single thing right, and every now and then you're just gonna run into somebody that is just not a very nice person. It doesn't mean you failed as a veterinarian or anything like that. I think it's good to keep that in mind too, that I believe that, especially in this profession, most people are good-hearted people. They're in it for the right reasons, but not everybody is, and that's true in any profession. And so you overlook those and focus on the majority that we get to meet in this profession that are really good people.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's about all I got, and we're coming up on time today. Any last closing thoughts?
I love that you're doing this as a topic because, as we've now probably said plenty of times, networking is not just an event. It's not just prepping for a national conference or AVMA or fill in the blank. It's something that, as you mentioned earlier, Jasmine, you do it every single day. I mean, with your clients, with your teams. And so it's the skills that make you a successful networker will make you successful in life. And so I just love that you're doing this.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you again, Stith, for this amazing conversation. I've had so much fun.
I appreciate that. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be here and have the conversation.